Alright, hello everyone. I hope you're doing well. Let's see, who do I have to thank in chat? Looks like Joking 6791 dropped both a Prime sub and a follow, so thanks for that. Really appreciate it. Let's see, I think that actually catches me up on alerts. But yeah, how are you all doing? Hopefully tonight is going well for you all. Tonight's topic of conversation will be depression in general. Few things I should say about that before we get started proper. This is not a cry for help. I'm also not a licensed medical professional, so don't take everything I say like it's professional medical advice. You know, the standard disclaimer. But in general, I've wanted to do a talk like this for a while. It's one of those things where I meant to do it during May since it was mental health month, but there just wasn't a good time for it. It was one of those things where either I myself just wasn't feeling up to it, or there wasn't really a good spot in the schedule for it. So here we are nearly 2 months later, finally having time and energy to do it. So hopefully it'll be a good talk. Other thing to consider is that this is just as much a quote-unquote lecture or motivational speech as it is a just chatting stream. So, I mean, I would welcome people sharing their own experiences with depression. I would welcome any sort of feedback in that regard. Just in general, I'm doing this both to sort of get some of my thoughts out there, but hopefully to give a few of you that are struggling with depression some insights as to what's helped me. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say before we get started. So let me just very quickly throw a disclaimer right up there, and we can start proper. So where I need to begin is with sort of an overview of how depression has affected me, because I feel like if I don't establish that I've been through what many people are going through, it's going to come off as pretentious or it's going to come off as preachy. So here's what's going on with me. So about 2012, 2013, I had a very lucrative job. Without saying what it was specifically, I was in a position that was more exclusive than an Ivy League school. It was the best of the best. It was quite literally a career-making job. However, what happened was that when I got that job and I actually started working there, I started to feel really depressed, and I didn't know why. And unfortunately, that minor depression led to me losing that job. I wasn't fired, but I was basically told, hey, if you don't, kind of turn in your resignation, we're going to have to fire you. It was one of those bad situations where they didn't want to deal with me anymore, although they did spend quite a bit of money to bring me on in the first place, but it was that bad. Like, it was, my depression and my work ethic was that bad that they had to have that kind of a talk with me. So I did what was natural in the situation. I handed in my resignation, went back to college to finish my degree. That was the wrong move, because losing that job, losing that high status, it affected me in a way that, to put a coin on it, I don't think severe depression is a good enough word. Like, I know there is no, like, super secret special super depression, nor would I ever want somebody to be diagnosed with such, but basically since 2012, 2013, I have been severely depressed in some way, shape, or form. Now, I know what some of you are probably thinking. You're thinking, ELH, that can't be right. I see you doing great streams, you laugh, you bring joy to other people's life. Surely you can't be depressed. Well, the truth of the matter is like many people with depression, I don't really talk about it a whole lot. Oh, thank you for the hydrate, by the way, dear wolf. I'm trying to figure out a way to put this, though, as I sip on my water here. I think Wayne Brady is a good example. Most people know Wayne Brady. If you don't, he's basically a African-American improv comedy actor, among other things. I know him through Whose Line. Whose Line Is It Anyway? And Wayne Brady, and it came as a shock to me, he came out, I want to say a few years back, maybe even farther back. He basically came out and said, hey, yeah, I've been struggling with depression since even Whose Line days. And, you know, that sort of made me take a step back. And I was like, well, wait a second. You brought so much joy to people, you know, I saw no signs of it. And that started to make me think to myself, you know, is what I'm going through really depression? And I think that's a common attitude for people with depression, is our society, or at least the society of the people I know and the people I've grown up with. It's one of those things where, and this might just, Jungle Boy 16, thank you for the follow. It's one of those things where, at least in American society, I hesitate to say Western in general, but definitely American society, at least as I've experienced it, there's a huge stigma around mental health. And as much as I would like to change that, the hard truth of the matter is that it's sort of seen as a weakness to talk about it. It's seen as something that is to be shunned into a back room, you know, pills thrown at you, and you sort of just deal with it, if you will. And that's Jungle Boy. That is indeed while I am talking about it. Oh, Genesis, thank you for the gift sub to Alorana. Hopefully I said that right. Thank you. But where I'm going with this is that because what I went through in a culture sense, I was again wondering whether it was depression I had and not just, oh, I'm down in the dumps, I need to think more positively kind of a thing. Which, if you've never had depression, unfortunately is a very common, how do I put this? I don't want to call them Karens, but it's kind of a Karen thing where they're just like, oh, well, just think more positive thoughts, or, you know, just feel better. Like, you can just turn on a switch in your mind and suddenly everything's amazing. It doesn't work that way. As much as we probably would all love it to, it just does. Just smile more, just get over it. Exactly. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't. And actually, Sunshine, you're beating me to my next point, which I love. What happened is that sort of self-doubt of, is this depression, led into my developing imposter syndrome, which I still experience to this day, to this very moment. It's one of those things where, how do I say this? It's to the point where I can put on a mask. Like right now, I'm VTubing. It's a mask. I could conceivably be real life streaming with a real life webcam if I wanted to. All I have to do is push 2 buttons and it happens. But I wear the mask of VTubing, of Ember here in particular, because it allows me to talk about things that I haven't had a chance to, or would normally go unnoticed, or just sort of shrugged off because, oh, you're depressed, it doesn't matter, blah, 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 blah. So, I guess where I'm going with this is, I've been depressed for a long time. I feel like I know what I'm talking about, but it's also not a competition. Depression is different for everybody. What one person is depressed over is different from what another person is depressed over. Some people, for example, get depressed because of a lost lover or a broken marriage or something along those lines. Whereas other people, like myself, we experience imposter syndrome, we experience anxiety, we experience sort of a self-doubt, a self-loathing. And there is no 100% way to treat it. I mentioned medication earlier where, you know, psychiatrists? Yeah, psychiatrists are the one that prescribe it. A psychiatrist can give you medication, but the medication, doesn't matter how good it is, it's not going to just, again, make that sort of switch in your mind sort of go off. It's not going to fix everything. You have to sort of put in a conscious effort to improve, and that's where a psychologist comes in nature. Oh, well, thank you, Capricious Nature. I appreciate the virtual hugs. And yes, Genesis, I have a whole spiel about imposter syndrome, which I'll get to in a moment, but I want to finish this thought before I get to that. But I love where your mind's at, because that is actually a very big talking point I have. Where was I? Right. So, medication's only going to get you so far. It's not a wonder drug. There is no such thing. It helps, but it's not going to fix everything magically. I know a lot of people think it will, but it doesn't. So that's kind of where a psychologist comes into play. And depending on your psychologist, sometimes they have ways to help you get over your depression or talk things out. There's things like cognitive behavior therapy. There's things like active avoidance. There's a whole arsenal of tools that they can offer you. But for someone like me, I've been through so many psychologists over the years that, maybe it's just I've never found the right one, or maybe it's just the messages they're giving me never stuck. Where this is all going is I've had to find a way to regulate my depression myself. So, using what Genesis just said here as an example, I am on antidepressants, and the medication is, using the metaphor here, it is sort of a road sign or some form of sign in general that's pointing you in the right direction that says, okay, maybe if you go this direction, you'll feel better, or maybe you'll perform better, things like that. So we're now going to transition into things that, and this is going to be sort of, I'm going to bounce between like 3 different topics here, so bear with me. But it's one of those things where I feel like it's best for me to share one thing that works, then switch topics, then one thing that works. And that way it's not just me preaching to the choir or just preaching at people. So one thing I will say is a lot of people, they neglect their gut health. And I know that might come as a shock or kind of a surprise. Like, people are like, what does gut health have to do with anything? Well, turns out quite a lot, especially in my case. I think I've said this on stream before, but I have a very severe case of ulcerative colitis. And if you don't know what ulcerative colitis is, basically, without getting into shitty details, it's pretty shitty. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty shitty. But it's similar to Crohn's, where I basically have a colon, I have a lower intestine that attacks itself. And that leads to my gut health, the bacteria in my gut, and everything in my gut leading to inflammation. Well, research says, and if you really want, I can find you a source on this, but I'm pretty sure even the Mayo Clinic has said this. The gut does affect your overall mental health. Again, it's not 100% one-to-one, but if you have something going on in your gut, chances are you're going to have something going on in your head. For example, I recently, as of 5 hours ago, got out of an infusion. For those that don't know, to keep my ulcerative colitis under control, I have to have a infusion of immunosuppressant drugs every 8 weeks. And that more or less resets my lower intestine and colon, and so it doesn't attack itself so much, so it doesn't eat itself and inflame and things like that. And what I've noticed is leading up to the infusion, like a few weeks leading up to the infusion, I am depressed, I'm just miserable, and I have these negative thought loops that just continually sort of cycle no matter what I do. But the moment I have that infusion, the moment the infusion is over, I stop feeling as anxious. I stop feeling as bad. Now, it's still bad, there is still that self-loathing, self-doubt, but it's not as pronounced. And I don't know if it's the placebo effect or not, but that's why I put so much stock in there being a connection between the gut brain and the real brain, because I live that every single day, where if I'm having a problem with my gut, again, I have a problem upstairs. So I guess my first bit of advice, first sort of thing to look into, again, not a medical professional, take what I say with a grain of salt, etc., disclaimers up there. What I would say is if you are struggling with depression, take a careful look at your diet. Take a look at what you're eating. Take a look at what's coming out the other end. And if it's not good, like if you're just putting in, hey, Yuria, thank you so much for dropping in, Yuria. You're up late. It's 3 a.m. for you, Yuria. What are you doing? Oh, I'm doing fine. Again, this is just sort of a talk to sort of talk about my experiences with depression and maybe to give, some other people some tools to work with for them in the future. But you know what? It means a lot, Yuria, that you're here so late in the evening. I appreciate it greatly. Where was I? Right. So I think there's the expression garbage in, garbage out. So, to put a finer point on it, if you're eating out 100% of the time and you're literally just eating fast food over and over and over, I don't think I need to tell anybody about the Taco Bell effect, but let's just say if you have Taco Bell constantly, it's not good for your gut health and therefore it's not good for your mental health. So, again, I guess my advice here for the first bit is take a look at what you're eating. Take a look at how your gut's reacting. And honestly, if you're noticing what is Taco Bell, it is a curse, Nakaro. It is a curse upon humanity. The only good thing to come from Taco Bell is a Baja Blast Mountain Dew. I will die on this hill. You know what? I'm not going to finish that thought because that could get very violent. Oh, I have very strong thoughts about Taco Bell. No, I do not mean Brazil. I mean, yeah, Brazil could be considered a curse. You could say it because you're from Brazil. I feel like if I say it, I'm just ragging on Brazil for no reason. Oh, Lord, thank you for dropping in, Nakaro. And the good news is confetti's off, so you're safe unless somebody spams emotes at you. Oh, Lord. But actually, you know what? I think Yuria dropping in is actually a good way to segue into my second point, and then we'll talk about imposter syndrome. So my second point, what's helped for me, or what helps when I'm feeling really down, is I have sort of actively arranged myself so that I have a lot of positive people in my life. And what I mean by that, and I'm going to start saying names, I don't mean to omit anyone, but these are the ones that come immediately to mind. I like people like Benosphere. Benosphere, if you don't know him, he's been on the channel before. He's a very high energy streamer, very high energy personality, very caring, very, to put it plainly, a very good guy. He will support you 100%. Doesn't matter what you're going through. Doesn't matter what's going on in his life. He will support you the best he can. And that's the type of person you should try to have in your life if at all possible. Almost like a cheerleader. If you can have just one cheerleader, and I know it sort of maybe sounds like I'm saying, well, just find a friend, dummy, or find a friend, forehead. VTubing is one of those things where even if you're doing the bare minimum of networking, you're going to find people that you like to collab with. You're going to find people that share your mindset. And you're going to meet a whole lot of interesting people along the way. I mean, people in chat. I mean, I appreciate the fact that you're all here right now. Taking the time out of your day to come watch me talk about depression. It's really one of those things where you have to sort of cultivate a positive mindset, or at least a positive environment. And again, you do that by empowering positive people and by really making it a conceited effort. Maybe not conceited. What's different con word? Concerted. That's the word I want. Concerted. Making a concerted effort to make it so that you have a... Yeah, exactly. You have a support network. And again, if I need to, I can go find a source for this, but I'm, again, 99.9% sure Mayo Clinic has said something to this effect. But having a support network is absolutely vital, not only to keeping your mood high, or at least regulated, but there is a research studied effect where having a support network actually lengthens your lifespan. And it's one of those things where, and hopefully my grandmother won't mind me saying this, I'm like 99% sure she won't mind. My grandmother, unfortunately, is currently without a support network. I mean, I do my best to call her every once in a while, but she too is depressed. You know, she's getting on in age, her health is failing her. You know, she doesn't get to see the grandkids. You know, standard old people getting old, you know, not being able to do as much as they could. And it's one of those things where whenever I call my grandmother, I try to be the Benosphere to her life. I try to be the Yuma. I try to be the Yuria. I try to be that positive person because Lord knows she needs it. And I guess that sort of is going to lead into imposter syndrome. Because in a way, everybody's wearing a mask. And to put maybe a finer point on it, I believe it was Shakespeare. Yeah, it was Shakespeare. I don't remember the play, which is ironic because the play in question they literally dropped in Congo this week. What is it? How Do You Like It? Is that the play? Anyway, the Shakespeare phrase is all the world's a stage and we're all just players in it, or something to that effect. And that is true. At any one moment, everybody is wearing a mask. Whether they know it or not, they're wearing a mask. And they only show their true selves to people they trust tremendously. And I'm trying to figure out a way to put this that's not going to single anybody out. Let's just say that I know people that, on the surface, seem perfectly happy. They seem like they have a great family life, that they're secure in their careers. But in those closed-door talks I have with them, you can tell that they're absolutely miserable. And that they wish they had something, someone that they could rely on. And a lot of that comes from imposter syndrome, I think. Or at least in this instance it does. Again, it's hard to not name names here because I don't want to single anybody out, but basically what you need to know is imposter syndrome comes one of two angles. Either you're insecure about your mask that you're showing everybody, or it's one of those things where you're kind of in a field of work, in a field of hobby, where you're kind of looking around at everybody and you're going, well, why am I not like them? Why am I not, they do this so much better than I do, but I'm still getting paid or I'm still getting noticed at a certain level. And you start to, again, self-doubt, self-loathe, like, do I deserve to be noticed? Do I deserve to be compensated as well? And it's sort of a self-feeding loop back, a feedback loop, which honestly is very hard to break. And I know this is going to come as a shock to most people, but at the end of the day, I think I'm a terrible GM. I mean, people give me positive comments all the time about how great my games are, but I've been at this for almost 10 years now. 9, yeah, it's about right. 2014, so that's 8 years coming up here in July. Anyway, during my 8 years as a career as a game master, a tabletop game master, I have never once thought that I have run a good game. And I know that's going to floor people. Like, you're going to hear that and go, well, that can't be right, ELH. You talk about how great your games are all the time, or we've got clips of you laughing your ass off and breaking your character into microphone. I can have fun on stream. I can have fun in my games. But at the end of the day, there's nothing really to stop that voice in the back of your head of, you could have done better. Or you latch onto a moment that you know you flubbed. And you sort of sit there and you go, why did I do that? How do I stop myself doing that in the future? So, in a weird twist, I know this is kind of coming out of left field, but bear with me. In a weird twist, I think depression has helped with the creative process. Now, again, I think people are going to be like, wait a second, ELH, what does that mean? And I'll explain in a moment, but I'm going to hydrate, so don't mind me for the next moment or so. So what I mean by that is that depression is more or less your brain, at least to me, this is what depression means to me. Depression is your brain trying to figure out a solution to which there is no answer, or to find the solution to a problem for which there is no answer. And what that means is not only are there self-feedback loops where there's just sort of that circular negative thinking, but there's also a lot of lateral thinking. And lateral thinking, at least in my experience, is how you get to be a creative person. It's one of those things where, because my brain is so wired to jump to conclusions, to jump to making up stories, to explain away why I'm depressed, it's actually made me a better game master because I'm constantly improving. I'm constantly looking for ways to improve. So in a way, depression has helped. But again, it's also done a lot of bad in my life. And again, I don't want to turn this into a contest. I don't want to call, again, belittle anyone. Let's just say that there's been a lot of bad in my life. And again, this isn't me calling for help. This is just me being frankly honest with you all. It's one of those things where, and again, not a cry for help. Don't worry. I'm fine. Not at that point in my life right now. But I think it's safe to say that there have been times when I have considered the final option. And it changes you, I think. When you feel that empty, when you feel absolutely worthless, when you feel that there is absolutely no reason to go on, there comes a moment where, again, to use a popular phrase, you stare into the abyss. And if you sit there long enough, if you stew with those emotions long enough, the abyss stares back. And I know I joke all the time about me being insane, but I honestly think there's truth in it. I think that it takes a very certain type of person to go to that extreme and come back from it unscathed. In fact, I think that's very rare. And this sort of leads into my next sort of advice for anybody struggling with depression. A lot of times people are going to, again, put your depression down because, oh, well, you're depressed over a girlfriend. Well, I lost my wife, kind of a thing. Or, hey, I was in Nam, or I was in Afghanistan. You have no right to be depressed. How do I say this? Your depression is not to be compared to anybody else's depression. It is not a contest. What you are feeling is valid. And you have to accept that. And accepting that what you're feeling is valid is the first step to fixing the problem. So if you can't fix it, or if you can't recognize that it's okay to feel things, and I probably should have started with that now that I think about it. There you go. There's that little depression, feedback loop in the mind. Probably should have started with that. But where that's going is once you've recognized the problem, you can... How do I say this? You can take steps towards correcting it. And everybody's path is going to be different. And what I would say is that what's worked for me is literally taking a step back. And I mean that in a physical sense. So maybe to explain what I mean. In a physical, or not in a physical sense, in a mental sense, whenever I get into a really bad loop of self-loathing, self-doubt, I stand up if I'm sitting down. And I literally take a step backwards. And you wouldn't think that does a whole lot. You probably would think, oh, okay, you stood up and take a step backwards. What does that do? The act of getting up and taking that step back actually is something that they use in cognitive behavior therapy, where it resets or causes a break in the loop. And it almost becomes a Pavlovian thing, where taking an action like that will lead you to being able to break those negative loops. For example, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. I used to have a really bad problem, and I think I still do, where I use certain phrases over and over and over again until it's pointed out to me. And obviously that doesn't help with depression, but it's one of those things where, in that same vein, until you recognize that there's a problem by stepping back, or until somebody points it out to you and then you take your own step back, either mentally or physically, you can't break the cycle. So, in a way, I guess what I'm saying is, try taking a step back, or try asking someone close to you that you trust, hey, I'm going through this. What do you think I should do? And I know that's a scary thing to say. I know it's a scary thing for me to say, hey, ELH thinks that you should talk to somebody, or, hey, I'm nervous as hell, or I don't have many friends, or... And this is going to sound harsh, but I think it needs to be said, because again, frank discussion. A lot of what I just said, a lot of the excuses that you come up with to not talk to people, that's anxiety talking. That's depression talking. That is anxiety and depression doing their damnedest to survive. And I guess this is kind of another point. It sometimes has helped me to view depression as an active opponent, or an active sort of opposing force in my life, which might sound insane, but that's where we stand. It's one of those things where, by quantifying it as an enemy, and this sort of ties back to what I said earlier, it makes it so that you start to think of ways to defeat the enemy, because it's almost a subconscious thing where you're like, all right, there's this really let's use Dark Souls for example. You walk into a Dark Souls boss, you get your butt handed to you, and then you're like, okay, that sucked. How do I beat this boss? And I mean, if you're an amazing gamer with good reflexes, for which I am not, you maybe go back in and kick the boss's butt. But for a lot of casual people, and I don't mean that as a derogatory thing, for a lot of casual people, like myself, you sort of hit a wall, and you hit that wall over and over and over, until finally something clicks. And then all of a sudden, that villain, that boss, whatever it is that you have quantified as an enemy, you start to push past it. Which leads me to a story that I've not really talked about with anyone. So, hey, stream exclusive, yay. So, there was a time before I got my current dog where, again, I was at the abyss. I was not in a good place. And it was one of those things, I honestly can't remember the specific meme, but it was one of those things where I was just browsing, the internet, looking at memes, when a specific meme came up. I think it was a, God, this is an ancient meme. I think it was one of those, like, Insanity Wolf memes, if you guys know what I'm talking about. I feel like that's a boomer internet term by now, but, like, the Insanity Wolf, where it's just, like, a wolf kind of, like, snarling, and it's, like, top text was, like, do something crazy, and the bottom text is, like, eat something even more crazy. It's ancient in internet times. It is so far in internet history that it might as well be the Stone Age. But, if I remember correctly, the Insanity Wolf meme was something along the lines of, shit your pants, nobody else has to know unless you tell them. And it seems so stupid when I say it out loud, and it seems like, well, that's not very funny, or why is that a meme? What it meant at the time was that it was the break in my circular loop, in my staring at the abyss loop. And it made me laugh my ass off. Hey, here you go, more butt puns, because we didn't have enough this stream. It's one of those things where it made me laugh the hardest I have ever laughed in my life. Because it was so absurd. It was like, well, why are you shitting yourself just to feel in charge? You don't need to do that. It was absurd. And that absurdity is what broke me from the cycle. And I think there's been quite a number of people that have struggled with depression have come forward with similar stories. What was that one? Was it Oatmeal and Happiness? Who did the allot? You know what? Let me Google real quick. Who did the allot? Because I know there's been Cyanide. Maybe it was Cyanide that... maybe it was Cyanide that did it. Let me look, because there's somebody I'm thinking of in particular. Take a moment here to hydrate as well. Ah, here it is. It is Hyperbole and a Half, which if you've never read Hyperbole and a Half, they put depression in terms that I wish I could articulate. Like, they are a much better, much more eloquent way of explaining what depression is and how they beat depression. It's one of those things where in their instances, Allie Broche, who basically does Hyperbole and a Half, it's one of those things where for her absurdity moment was just this random pee, like, you know, a pee from a pod, underneath a refrigerator. And the absurdity of it broke the cycle. Now, this is going to sound a little bit preachy, for which I apologize, but you can't just go searching for absurdity. A lot of people, when they're depressed, at least in my experience, I mean, I've done it too, you sort of start trying to fill the void that you're feeling with new hobbies, or maybe taking your current hobbies a little too far. You start to try to fill that hole with something. For me, I'll simply say that I used to have an opioid problem, which again might come as a shock, but yeah, I mean, trust me, I don't talk about it because it's not a fun thing to talk about, but there was a time where, yeah, it was not great. But where I'm going with this is that, how to put it? And this is me struggling in my own way to put this in a way that doesn't sound totally insane. That's not gonna work either. Well, what I would say is that this might even be a changed attack, but it's what's coming to mind. What you need is, and I don't want to call it luck, because luck isn't the proper word for it, but you almost need an external force to help you push yourself out of the abyss, or push yourself out of depression. And sometimes that push comes from a hobby. So again, to use the example I was going to use originally, now that I figured out a way to say it, for me, tabletop gaming, it was Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition, was one of my harebrained attempts to break myself out of depression, to break myself out of my, at the time, addiction. And honestly, I think it's safe for me to say this, I think 4th edition saved my life, quite literally. Because what 4th edition did, and really just D&D and role-playing in general did, was it enabled me to explore possibilities that depression simply had cut off to me. That depression had taken away my dream job. Depression had taken away my college years, my quote-unquote best years of my life, of my 20s. Role-playing and being a game master allowed me to be in control of something for the first time in my life. Since having depression, I should probably qualify, because I feel like before depression, I was a pretty good kid. I was very happy. I got good grades, etc., etc., etc. Depression hit. Grades went into the toilet. I didn't feel like I had control over anything, not even my own body. Role-playing came along, and suddenly I could control everything about it. I could control the world. I could control the characters. I controlled the story. I controlled everything. And that little, insignificant little bit of control gave me a rock to stand by. And to this day, role-playing is something that, again, without naming names, role-playing is something that I know for a fact, because people have said this to my face, it has helped my players and viewers. It has helped them confront things in their life or explore possibilities in their life for which they couldn't because of depression, or they couldn't because they were trapped in a loveless marriage, or, you know, things of that nature. Role-playing opened the door to a world of possibilities that they didn't think was possible. And that's probably why, to probably my dying day, whenever the hell that is, I will probably defend the hobby of role-playing even if it turns into something completely alien to me, because that was my lifeline before I got my dog. Now, again, I don't want anyone to worry, but I do have to fairly say that my dog's getting on in age. She's the best thing after role-playing that's happened to me, and I'm going to go through a really rough patch. Oh, thank you for the hydrate. Oh, that hit the spot. I think it's fair for me to say that whenever my dog goes ahead of me, I'm gonna be depressed as hell. I probably will cancel streams for a couple weeks, or I'll do something stupid and I'll try to just stream through the pain. But it's one of those things where, oddly enough, I sort of am okay with it. And this is sort of leading into another topic of depression, which I think a lot of people, even when they're talking about depression, don't like talking about. There comes a point in depression where you're at that point and you're sort of staring at the abyss. The abyss is staring back at you. And you feel nothing. Absolutely nothing. Your brain is blank. And you feel like a broken individual. You start to think, well, why am I not feeling anything? Like, why am I not feeling sad? Why am I not feeling happy? Why am I not feeling anything? And I think that breaking moment where you realize that something has broken within you can be almost a moment of catharsis. And I know that sounds strange, like, to go to that extreme, to be that far, that deep in depression. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but basically there's I believe it's a Japanese, let me just Google it real quick before I say something stupid. Let me see, what is it? Ah, here it is. And I am going to butcher this, for which I apologize. But basically, there is a method of making pottery that is called Kintsukuroi. Kinsukori. I think I'm saying that right. Where basically the principle behind Kinsukori is that you take something that is broken and you repair it. And the final piece of pottery, yeah, Bubba Lubber's got it. So the Kinsukori basically breaks pottery on purpose and then repairs it with gold or silver lacquer, and the end piece is more beautiful for it. So, to extend the metaphor maybe a little bit further, by recognizing that you're broken, by recognizing that you need help, by recognizing that you need to do something, it begins the healing process. And sometimes that healing process is going to take the rest of your life. Actually, you know what, Bubble Lover? I like that. I like that. D&D is my gold lacquer. I like that. I like that a lot. I'm going to use that in the future. It's one of those things where I feel like there's a lot of shame. Not just in culture, but there's a lot of shame in admitting that you're broken. And that shame that comes with that is something that... How to put this? It's almost like depression is trying to further itself by making you feel shame. When in reality, the ability to... I mean, Bubble Upper's kind of where the point I want to make, where if you don't admit you're broken, then you can't start healing. I mean, that is... I feel like we might be talking in circles here, but it's such as the way my brain works. But it's definitely one of those things where I do think that people who have been through depression, people that have been through a midlife crisis, a quarter-life crisis, people who have experienced the tragedies of life, the tragedies of sentient life, I think there are definitely people who, and I don't want this to sound negative, but I really can't think of a different way to say it. Some people aren't able to heal, but we shouldn't fault them for their ability not to heal. Because again, it's not a race, it's not a competition. What I'm feeling is not the same as what somebody else is feeling. And for those other people, they might stare into the abyss and simply fall into it. And there's a lot of stigma towards that. There's a lot of hatred and a lot of, anger, because if you have loved ones, if you have things that you leave behind when you go to the abyss, there's a lot of confusion, a lot of anger of, oh, I could have done something better to help them, or I didn't do enough to help them. I guess what I'm trying to say is, sometimes when people break, they break for good. But when I say break for good, I don't mean that in a sort of final sense. Also, D Quartermain, thank you for the message. I appreciate it. When I say someone is broken for good, I don't mean that they can't heal or they can't become a better person or anything like that. What I mean is, there is a fundamental difference between what somebody was prior to being broken and what comes out the other end. Again, for me, what that was is I broke, and I went from being a straight A student, honors roll, principals list, avid video gamer, big into a lot of nerdy things, a lot of IT work. My entire hobby, my entire self-worth is not based on what I know, but it's what I bring to other people's lives. Where because I broke, and I broke for good, I'm now able to see what breaks other people. And knowing how I broke and how they broke allows me to facilitate a process by which they can heal. And as I said earlier, I know for a fact some of my games have helped people. And that's sort of my goal with all this. I mean, I didn't turn on the camera tonight because I needed to get something off my chest, or that I was doing it for attention, or anything like that. I did it because I wanted to reach out and help maybe even just one person feel a little bit more comfortable with the fact that what they're going through can be beaten. It just might require, to beat a dead horse, might require being a little bit broken. But yeah, I'm going to end that point there, because I feel like if I go further, I'll just start repeating myself even more than I already am. But let's now move on to a more positive thing, something a little more positive that I found that helps me when I'm feeling down and depressed. So something that really helps is keeping a little folder, whether it's a physical folder or maybe a little cabinet, or if you're on a computer. Actually, my train of thought has just gone away, so I'm going to read Phantom's comment here. You've been listening for a while and you don't really know how to say it, but it's nice to hear someone who sounds a little like me. And again, that is my goal, where I want to connect with another soul in such a way that they feel welcome and they feel empowered to talk about this. And Stephen NC 1071, you are welcome. You are very much welcome. So, what I would say, where I was going originally with my point, which, if you haven't been able to tell, when I do rants like this, when I do just chatting, sometimes my train of thought just kind of, whoop, there it goes, bye-bye. Which is something that I need to work on, not from a depression, self-anxiety, but I just need to get a little bit more cognitive where my train of thought is. I'm glad to hear it, Bubble Lover. I am glad to hear that the Lancer campaign was a good force for you. I like to hear it. I remember where I was going with my train of thought. At least, I think I do. Whatever, it's my lecture. I'll go where I want. Oh, you know what? Actually, before I go into that point, that'll be my where I want to go next. You can be depressed and you still can laugh, and I think that is something that a lot of people don't realize, where you can still laugh and have a good time, but still be depressed at the end of the day, and that's perfectly okay. Like, you can laugh your ass off 1 minute, and then 2 hours down the line, you're in the middle of a 4 a.m. Existential crisis as you sort of pace back and forth and wonder if you should take a 5th shot of brandy. It's one of those things where it's almost an invisible sort of illness, where you can't just look at someone walking by in the street and go, oh, they have depression, or oh, there's something wrong with them. And what I need to say here is that even though it's not usually visible on the surface, everybody is broken in their own way. Some people break because of a job. Some people break because of depression and anxiety. Some people break because they go through war, or they experience extreme poverty, or they are homeless. People break for different reasons. But what my point, or at least the point I'm trying to make, or at least I'm hoping is coming across, is that when you realize that everybody is broken in some way, it makes you feel a little bit more empowered to talk about how you've been broken. And I think I've said this like 6 times already, but a good person isn't going to turn you coming to them and going, hey, I'm feeling really down, I feel broken, can we talk about it? A good person, a good ear, a good listener, isn't going to take your being broken and trivialize it. Because that's... I hate to put it this way, but honestly, that's what happens a lot of the time, is you kind of go to someone and you say, hey, I'm broken, I'm feeling depressed, I need help, please help. And what happens is that person goes, oh, well, you shouldn't be depressed because you're upper middle class, or your father works for so-and-so, or you have so many nice things, or you have the life I could dream that I had. They basically trivialize what you're feeling. They make you feel even worse for feeling what you're feeling. And that type of person, to put a fine point on it, you don't want to have that kind of person in your life. Now, I know that seems maybe a little extreme, and Lord knows I should be taking my own advice on this. And I think I'll say this with the knowledge that this might reach them, but I think it needs to be said all the same. My parents growing up were narcissists, and that in and of itself, if you've never been raised by a narcissist, may God have mercy on anybody else who does. Because when you're raised by a narcissist, you start thinking in certain patterns. You start to trivialize everything you're thinking, and they're not the type of person you want in your life. And even though they might be family, even though they might be, you know, someone you can't, like, I know the saying and the thinking is, oh, they're family, you have to put up with them. Fuck no, you don't. If they're toxic in your life, unless there's a very good reason to not cut them out of your life, that's my next advice. Do it. You have to cut them out of your life. And that sort of speaks to the first sort of point I made, surrounding yourself with positive people. You gotta cut them. And I'll finish that thought in a second, but I do want to read what Watney just read. Let me see. I feel so privileged to be in your regular Tuesday night group. You've grown a lot personally in the RP craft since we started 1.5 years ago. You empowered me to take the captain's chair in the first game for the group, even though you were super hesitant. You were super hesitant. I almost feel like I had to bully you into taking the captain's chair, which I'm glad I did, because I think it worked out in the end very well. And you're very much welcome. I'm glad that me sort of pushing you to be something that you weren't ready for, maybe, or at least you thought you weren't ready for, I'm glad I was able to give you that push, that sort of positive push in the right direction. I'm very happy to hear that. It's one of those things where once you realize, and this is sort of revisiting where I was going with my train of thought before, it runs off the tracks and hits some poor animal that's just watching the train go by. I don't know why my mind went there, but... It's one of those things where once you realize that even familial relationships and friendships and best friendships and any relationships you can have with another person. Hey, Gray Matter, how are you doing? Once you realize that any relationship you have with another person, no matter what that relationship is, once you realize that it is ultimately temporary, or can be temporary, you start to cherish your interactions with the good type of people a lot more. For example, I've run many games over my game mastering career, and I've kept up with some of my past players and other past players, I've sort of just let fall by the wayside. I haven't really made an effort to get to know them better, or just haven't really connected with them. And that's perfectly okay. And I think is kind of where my next positive advice is going to go. Once you start to cherish the time you have with other people, because it is temporary, the more you can start to feel empowered, or perhaps more positive, that the time you're spending means something. And that is something where, when you have depression, having something leave a positive mark like that, like having something that you can look back on and go, I'm glad I did that, or I'm glad I spent the time to do that. Having moments like that mean everything to someone with depression, or at least in my case, it means everything. Because a lot of times what happens with depression is you sort of end up in situations where you stay in bed all day, or you go to your computer and you go to Reddit and you just downvote everybody. You basically end up in a I did nothing the entire day loop, or I did nothing for 6 hours but cry in a corner. You do something that you kind of look back on when you're depressed and you go, why did I do that? I wasted so much time doing that. And you'll feel angry. Like there's no other way to say it. You will feel angry. You will hate yourself for wasting that time. But you can't let that hate define you. And I know that's hard to hear maybe for some people. But the moment you let the hate define you, the moment you let the anger and the negative emotions define you, that's when depression wins. And I know that might seem strange, as much as I've mentioned the abyss. And I probably should have said it when I was on this point, but people who go into the abyss, they're not doing it out of an act of weakness. It might seem like that. But again, to people like myself who have been broken, who have been there, you know that what they did was actually, in their minds, one of the biggest moments of control they had in their life for a very long period of time. And I feel like as a society, we shouldn't really view that sort of thing as negatively as we do. It should not be illegal, for one, but that's probably getting into the weeds. But my point being that how to say this? The shackles we put on ourselves and that we impose upon others are something that we have to, as not only individuals, but as a community, as a group, as a society, as a world. This is getting into idealism, but hear me out. We need to be more positive overall. We need to make an effort, even if that effort is seemingly monumental or seemingly impossible to do, or it's one of those things where I talked about like just flipping a switch and you feel better. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is, by taking little steps, little insignificant steps, you can start to change the bigger picture. Let me use an example from this week. So again, as I said earlier, ulcerative colitis leading up to my infusion, I'm usually the most depressed I've been, in that sort of 8-week cycle kind of a thing. So for the last 2 weeks, I've sort of been letting up the vacuuming of the dog hair, and I've been letting the dishes pile up in the sink, standard depression stuff where you just stop caring about literally anything. And what I did today when I came home after the infusion, still feeling depressed, I did one thing. Just one thing. All I did was vacuum. So now downstairs no longer looks like it's been hit by a dog hair blizzard. But that's all I did. That's all I did. I just vacuumed the living room and my foyer and the stairs. That's all I did. That's all I did. Just one little thing. But that one little thing gave me further energy to go, okay, well, that looks better. I'm glad I did that. I don't like the look of those dishes in the sink, so I washed the dishes. That in turn empowered me to then turn and go, you know what, I'm feeling hungry. I'm not going to eat out tonight. I'm going to make something special. And I didn't make anything special, chat. I did nothing fancy. I literally just took a bunch of noodles, threw them in a boiling pot of water, put a little salt in it, and I called that a meal. There was some Alfredo sauce involved, but I didn't make it myself, so whatever. My point here is, if I didn't take that first little step to vacuum, or that first little step to push past that feeling of not wanting to do not wanting to do anything, I might not be talking to you right now. And I don't mean that like in a final sense. Like it would have been one of those things where I wouldn't have had the energy or the peace of mind to come on stream and talk about these sorts of heavy topics had I not made those little steps hours and hours ago to give me the energy to go on. And I know that might sound like I'm just saying, well, just do it kind of a thing. And I'm not going to do the whole Shia LaBeouf meme. But there is some truth in it. I know for a fact that some people, when you're broken, when you are tremendously depressed, you don't want to do anything, you can't do anything. Or at least you think you can't do anything. But yes, actually the actual cannibals Shia LaBeouf. Yeah. But yeah, as Watney put it, it's paralyzing. Everything feels impossible. Everything feels like you can't do anything. And because you're paralyzed, you do nothing, which leads to you feeling angry at yourself, etc., etc., etc. So, returning to an earlier point, what you have to do is you have to force yourself to take a step back. And you have to go, okay, what one little thing can I do that will make a positive difference? And it doesn't have to be vacuuming. It doesn't have to be dishes. I mean, hell, maybe the vacuuming, you don't even do the whole room. Like, you literally just do a corner of a carpet. That's a corner of the carpet that is now vacuumed. It is a foothold, not only in the actual act of vacuuming, but in that positive thinking and in that breaking of the cycle where you go, okay, I vacuumed a corner of the floor. That wasn't too hard. Maybe I can do better. And it's hard to put it into words, the feeling of that, of what I just said, of realizing, oh, X is just Y little things. I can do Y little things. That act of doing the little things is something that feels monumental, but once you do it, you'll feel a lot better. And I think gray matter is actually strangely hitting along the same point where sometimes you don't know there's a mess or you don't know there's a problem until you take that step back or until you take the small step forward and make an attempt to fix it. So I guess kind of what I want to use as my final talking point, advice, whatever for the evening, is for those of you that are struggling with, and I guess this is, I should qualify this, this is for any VTubers or any streamers or any really content creators that are out there. The moment you let numbers define you, the moment you let some cold, unchangeable thing define you. For VTubers, for streamers, that could be sub count, that could be view count, that could be any number of metrics that go in streaming. And, you know, oh, I didn't get enough subs this month, or oh, I don't have enough follows, or oh, I only have 5 viewers. You can't let that define you. And I'm not going to name names, because Lord knows I know quite a number of people. Literally today, I saw 2 people do it. A lot of time when you start to feel depressed and you start to, you know, think, oh, I'm not doing as good as somebody else, or I'm not doing as good as, you have to take that step back and you have to break that train of thought, because it's not a race. It's not a competition. I know some people, it's their job, but you'll do a better job when you're not self-shackling yourself. And I know that probably sounds like, you know, me pontificating or me making something up, or, you know, what is the expression, on a high horse or something along those lines. I'm not saying it because I think I'm the best streamer in the world. Far from it. I think I'm a terrible streamer. I say that because I'm now, having been broken, I'm the type of person that I want to empower others, and I want to help them either make that forward momentum, as Grey Matter says, or I want to help them take that step back so that they can then proceed forward on their own time. Does that make any sense? I hope it does. But it's definitely one of those things where sometimes you just need to take a chance. You need to push yourself to try and realize that failure is a possibility. But if you don't try in the first place, you've automatically failed. And I think that's where my train of thought has come to an end. But yeah, at this point, I know I've been talking for a while, and I know I haven't been keeping up on chat, but I would love to hear some questions, some thoughts from chat. Is anything I said useful? Is there anything you'd like me to expand upon? Is there anything that you would like to hear me, you know, talk about more or explain more? And it doesn't have to be about depression or VTubing or whatever, just in general. Is there anything I can do for you, chat? And as I wait for the stream buffer to catch up and people to type, I'm going to take a quick drink here, so my avatar's going to kind of flicker a little bit, but bear with it. Specific YouTube video uses a checkpoint for your state of mind. Yeah, I can see that, where you sort of gauge your current mental health by how you react to a certain video. I can see that. Distraction therapy, recognizing when your brain is messing with you, helps a lot. Yep, distraction therapy is therapy. I mean, it is a form of it. Definitely helps. What is the hottest D&D 5th edition race? Bubble Lubber, I'm going to need to ask you a question to answer your question. What do you consider to be official D&D 5e races? Because all of them, probably. No, I mean, let me see it this way. I love arachnids. Arachnids are cool. Snakes are cool. Centaurs are cool. But I don't think I could pick one singular quote-unquote hottest race for D&D. I don't think I could. I honestly don't think I could. Also, Quartermain, I'm more than happy to share. Again, I've been meaning to do this for quite a while. I just haven't had the time or the motivation to do it, so I'm glad I was able to do it for tonight. If it is an official book, either as a playable race or an enemy race. Ooh, if it's an enemy race, ooh. You know what? This is probably going to reveal a little bit about me that you didn't want to know, but Paladin of Tiamat right here. I love Tiamat. Tiamat is amazing. Literally have her Fate Grand Order. I have a plushie. I have a poster on my wall of Tiamat, of all variety of both Grand Order and of D&D variety, 5-headed dragon. I really like Tiamat, guys. I really like Tiamat. So I think I'm gonna have to go with dragons. If you're gonna give me enemy races, I'm gonna go with dragons, because Tiamat, I mean, she's right there. I mean, literally on my wall, right there. Oh, that's okay. All right, small thing I have to say. I know I already had a final point, but I gotta say another final point. As hard as it is to maybe hear this, you gotta learn to laugh at yourself. You gotta learn to laugh at your absurdities. Because by laughing at your absurdities, you don't... How do I put this? You sort of, not normalize, but you sort of feel better about yourself, because humor is and can be used as a coping mechanism. So, Grey Matter actually puts it better than I can. Don't be too serious. Like, recognize that maybe what you're saying or doing is silly, but own it. Like, literally own what you're doing. Rather than feel, oh, is that too silly kind of thing. No, just own what you're doing. Let's see. Quartermain, I am terrified to try my hand at some supplements for various tabletop role-playing games, but you and others have inspired to just jump in and go for it. Even if they suck, you can learn. Exactly. And that is actually something I wish I could tell every aspiring game master, or every person that has the potential to be a game master. Just do it. Like, you're gonna fail. Like, your first session, you can prepare as much as you want. You can do as much game prep as you want. Your first session's gonna suck. But you have to start somewhere. Until you realize what's involved, until you practice a skill, you're gonna suck at it. And game mastering is a skill. It is something that if I were to show you my real-life resume, resume does list dungeon mastering, game mastering as a skill. Now, of course, I explain on the resume that I'm like, oh, well, I'm good at conflict resolution, I'm good with lateral thinking, I'm good at being self-starting, things of that nature. But there's a lot of skills involved with game mastering where you're not going to learn them until you either experience and figure out what you need to do to grow, or until someone points it out to you, which again, you can't do if you don't try in the first place. So, end of the day, jump in, fail a few times, you'll be a better person for it. I promise. But yeah. When it comes to planning and running sessions, how do you push past second-guessing what you've come up with and keep from simply pushing the game off? Okay. This is actually... this is something that's going to reveal a small point of how I do scheduling, but whatever. I've already told you many things tonight that I wouldn't have normally, so hey, fuck it, let's do it. There are times when I will plan sessions months in advance. I'll have notes for everything. And it comes to the point, hour before the game, 30 minutes before the game. Hell, I've done it in the past when I was first starting. I canceled games 10 minutes before the game started. And what I found was, for the first 10 or so minutes past when the game would have started, and I would have been doing something, I would have been running an adventure, running a game. After that 10 minutes, I start to go, well, why did you do that? You could have been having fun and laughing, and, you could have been having a great time right now, but you canceled. And that's going to sound negative, because it is. Because I'm downgrading or negging myself for essentially giving up. Now, the question was how do you prevent that? How do you stop from giving up or second guessing? What I would say I'm gonna put this in Shia LaBeouf terms. Just fucking do it. And I know that that probably doesn't sound like it helps, but again, hear me out. If you continually second guess yourself and you don't actually push yourself to try something new, to try to fail, then you're going to continue second guessing yourself until you find a way to break that loop. So yes, there have been sessions where, I mean, hell, let's use Congo as an example. Congo, the session this week, small spoilers by the way. Congo, I went into that game with maybe about 5 minutes of prep. 5 minutes of prep and a general idea of where I wanted the story to go. I was extremely close to canceling. But I looked at what I had. I looked at the fact that, you know, I had people online, that I had people already having a good time, relaxing and discussing with each other and generally venting and, you know, being a community, being a good play group. Sometimes the best medicine for a GM's soul is to see the players having fun. Now, your own fun is also very important, and you're going to run a poor game if you yourself are not having fun. But sometimes the act of just pushing past it and saying, fuck it, I'll GM anyway, you'll end up having a much better time. And to put it plainly, prep isn't everything. Sometimes it's more fun for everybody involved to toss everything out. I mean, there have been sessions where I've tossed the entire prepared adventure out because the player said one random thing that got my brain thinking, you know what, that's much cooler than what I had. You know what, yeah, let's explore this. And that's sort of what I love about tabletop role-playing is the collaborative storytelling element. What I would say is that, and maybe this will better answer your question than me just saying, just do it. Lean into the fact that it is collaborative storytelling. Lean into the fact that your players might have a good idea of where to take a story or a plot thread, and let them help you and the rest of the table write the story together. And, I mean, that takes time. I mean, and different groups have different dynamics. But in general, everybody at the table having fun together is better than no game at all, I think is where I want to take that. Alright, let's see. Oh, by the way, my company, Grey Matters Game Mastering, has an actual contract with a fellow indie dev studio starting mid-July, providing Q&A and game design at Hourglass Escapes. Ooh, very nice. Congrats. ELH, applying for a job at a daycare or school. You've wrangled D&D players. Toddlers are a piece of cake in comparison. Yeah. Not gonna lie. I think scheduling, the scheduling part of any tabletop role-playing game, if you can manage to keep a semi-consistent schedule, you're about 50 to 60% better than most secretaries are already doing. So, yeah, no, not gonna lie. Game mastering and tabletop role playing, put it on your resume. There's ways to do it. Yeah. Take another hydrate here as chat catches up. Oh, one thing I did want to ask. So I know I have it at kind of low volume, and I usually talk rather loud. But how are people liking the background music? Those of you that have noticed it. Is it nice? Is it loopable? Is it jarring? It's good? Okay. Because it's great. Okay, we'll take great. It's nice and calming. Ah, excellent. I chose good then. Or chose well then. Liking the music? Okay, good. The reason I ask is because you may have noticed recently that, well, I mean, just look around. New overlays and new music, obviously, and new sort of emotes, which if you're a sub, there's 5 new emotes you can have fun with. In fact, let me just spam them there in chat. If Nakaro's here, he's gonna hate me. Oh, he is here. Yep, he says it right as I push the enter button. Sorry, Nakaro. You don't hate me, you love me. But there's your 5 new emotes. But in general, oh no. Oh, come to the States, Nakaro, and we'll talk about it. But yeah, the reason why... Hey, Benno, we actually talked about you earlier in a positive light. Thank you for dropping by, Benno. How are you doing, Benno? The reason... I know, imagine coming to the USA, why would you do that? The reason I'm putting things into, like, new emotes, new overlays, and all that, is because I'm going to be making a bigger push into streaming. A lot of my games have sort of petered off because that's kind of what happens to games. So I'm going to be making a better effort to do just chattings like this, to do random video games, even if it's just 2 viewer streams. I need to get better at streaming, and I think the act of new overlays, new music, etc., it raises the quality of which I can aspire to. Like, let's pick on Bennosphere because he's here. Benno runs an amazing stream when Benno is able to stream, which I'm hoping, fingers crossed, Benno, that you are able to start streaming again, because those are always highlights when I'm able to catch them live. And no, Benno, we're real talking here. You do run a good stream. You do. But I want to use you as an example. And again, I'm not doing this to pick on you, but because you are a good example. What Benno does is he comes in very high energy. And he's not in high energy to the point that it's like obnoxious or that you're kind of turned off. He comes in with sort of the high energy that you can feed off of. Like as a viewer or a fellow collab mate, it's infectious energy. So that's one thing where, you come into the stream, he psychs you up and you feel, oh, I want to watch more of this kind of a thing. The other thing that Benno does very, very well, and which I try to aspire to, is he has chat gags. He has funny point redeems, which the only reason I don't have my funny point redeems on is because I thought this was a serious topic, and I thought, I think confetti in the middle of me going, oh, and then I was having an opiate addiction. Yay! I feel like that would have killed the mood. I just feel like that would have been just a little bit weird. Just a little bit. But it's definitely one of those things where, I view people like Benno as a role model. I view people like Twin Tails and AI Candy and Witcheroo and a whole other different, whole slew of streamers, where each of them does something I want to take and make my own. And it's something that I'll get better at. I'm going to suck at it for a while. But eventually I would like to be able to look back and go, yeah, I have made improvement, kind of a thing. And I feel like this is kind of beating a dead horse to anybody who's in the VTuber community, but I'll say it because fuck it, why not? Oh yes, Benno's Mr. Handy Hat. That was amazing for the VTuber game. I gotta post that VOD. Let me make a note. Post the VOD. Okay. So this is gonna sound like I'm preaching to the choir to anyone who's in the VTuber scene, but it's worth saying. A model isn't going to bring you viewers. You'll get a few clicks. You'll get a few clicks if it's a shiny new model. People will click in and be like, "Ooh, cool, cute model," or "Hey, you look hot," kind of. You'll get some. It's not going to give you viewers, though. It's going to get you click-throughs, and I think that's a no Franks in this stream. False advertising 0 out of 10. There you go. Hi, Professor X. How you doing, buddy? But yes, as Benno has put it, a model is the foot in the door. to keep people, you have to have... Damn it, Benno, you're beating me to my own points. You have to have content. And if you don't have the content, you don't have the ability to riff off chat, you don't have the ability to talk to yourself, you don't have the ability to fill dead air, then you're going to fail as a streamer unless somebody tremendously huge notices you for whatever reason. And even then, like, I'm just using this as an example. Let's say that Iron Mouse, which if you don't know Iron Mouse, look her up. Lovely individual. She's an amazing person. I know she gets a bad rap sometimes being in VShojo, but honestly, Iron Mouse is very commendable for what they've gone through. But let's say, for example, that Iron Mouse, in her infinite wisdom, decides that I'm worthy of a raid. And suddenly her, I don't know what she's at recently, but let's say 3 or 5 or hell even 7K viewers come cascading into my stream. Well, obviously, of course, your brain's going to break and you're going to go, holy crap, I've got 7,000 viewers. But in order to keep even a fraction of those viewership, you have to provide something that keeps the viewer entertained. And some people rely on their model just a little bit too much to do that. When in reality, it's all about your presentation and all about the experience that you cultivate. It's definitely one of those things where model and production value only matters so much as the talent matters, is where I want to go with that thought. But yeah, Iron Mouse is unreal. She's amazing. Like, if you thought what I've been talking about tonight has been heavy, just... It's... Iron Mouse has been through some shit. She's been through some shit. Who gives VShojo a bad rep? Let's just say that on places that are not Twitter and Reddit, there are some very negative opinions of VShojo. I'm not going to repeat any of the negative things, but let's just say that there are definitely circles of the internet which I travel in that... let's just say that they're viewed very negatively. I don't think it's deserved, but, you know, people are going to be people and talk about ugly things in an ugly space. But I don't want to get into that, because that's a whole thing. Forgive a moment, but I think you're an epic GM, and when folks gave you drama for your avatar, they didn't even give you a chance. Well, hold on. Yes, Benno, Clover. Clover is what I'm referencing. Well, one of 2 things I'm referencing. The other non-Clover thing is something that I have never admitted and will never admit to visiting, because you just don't go there, period. Anyways, Quartermain, I think it's something where what tends to happen with VTubing in particular is people just see cute anime girl, or they see hot anime boy, or they see boy in a hoodie, or they see girl in a... They see the model, but then they don't stick around long enough to get to know the person under the model. And, I mean, honestly, that's something, I mean, even to this day, I'm still getting comments on some of my videos like, oh, I didn't stick around because I couldn't get over the avatar, or, oh, why are you using an avatar? That's, it looks stupid, you know, whole bunch of negativity. And what I realized, and the reason I've continued to be a VTuber for as long as I have been, is because, well, to put it plainly, I've learned not to give a flying fuck what other people think I do with my time. Which I probably should have talked about during the whole depression speech, but whatever. It's definitely one of those things where I've honestly seen, and again, I'm not going to name names, but there have been 1 or 2 people that have made a negative comment where they're like, oh, I don't get the whole avatar thing, I think it's stupid, I'm not going to watch your content. There's been 1 or 2 people that they've said something like that, and then 6 months down the line, I get a new message that says, hey, I wanted to apologize, I gave your content a chance, and I think you're a really good game master, I think what you do is a good job, and, you know, I don't I don't look down at them. I just simply say, you are forgiven. And I don't say anything else. I literally just say, you are forgiven. And I don't make it a bigger issue, because if you don't let people make mistakes and forgive them for it, I mean, kind of what you have to do, be a good person. But it's, I will say, though, I have to be honest, it's just a little bit satisfying to see a detractor go from blah, 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 models, blah, 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 and to go to, actually, my king, I would like to say that your performance was amazing, and then you just go, yes, it was. Are you coming to the next one? Yes, my liege. Very well. I hope to see you there, and even if not, I'm glad you thought of me. Yes, my king. Why are we doing the two-person thing? Because I thought this would be a good bit, and because I could do so. My king, I think the chat's gonna think you're more insane than you already are. That is impossible. They know I am absolutely bonkers. And that's the end of that bit. Oh, Lord. Oh. Yeah, so Bubble Lover, it's one of those things where your self-made and rigged model was perfectly fine for VTubing. Like, no joke, whenever you get to run your Thirsty Swords lesbian one-shot, I want to see it. Like, I'll do my best to drop by, or at least say hello. But I do think that, again, the model isn't everything. Nobody expects a day one VTuber to come out with an AI candy level model, or a Snuffy model, or an EV Sojo, or a HoloLive level model. If anything, it gives you something to aspire to, where you say, you almost set goals for yourself, where you go, okay, if I make X amount of money, or if I make X amount of subs, I will be able to upgrade to Y model. And you sort of set goals for yourself. And actually, hold on. Okay, this probably is going to be a whole lecture. Probably going to be a whole lecture next week, because next week, Pokemon is off because I think Yuma is going to Disney World? Land? Which one's in California? Land, I think? No? Yeah, World's in Florida, Land's in California. Yeah, so Yuma's going to Disneyland, so she's going to be pooped, and I don't want to overstress her. So, we're not going to have Pokemon next week, but what I'm thinking of doing is I'm thinking of making this whole, like, frank discussion, quote-unquote, thing. I'm thinking of making it maybe a regular thing, where maybe I just take a random topic, and I just talk about it. Like, I just give my honest opinion on it. And I don't do it to be a blowhard, or I don't do it to just hear myself talk, but to me, I do it because I want to be a mentor or a sort of a source of advice for people who might be thinking or going through something similar. Yeah, I can't use that example on this stream. I'll have to run it by them before I use that example. But let's just say that what matters to me at the end of the day is making a positive impact on somebody's outlook, mood, whatever. And if I can do that by offering them a way that lets them be a happier person, then I'm very happy myself. And yes, Benno, you deserve all the accolades for your performance on the first one shot. You really do. Oh, Lord. Oh, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna have to do this on the fly, but do you guys want to see something cool? Do you want to see my my work in progress new model? Do you want to see it? Do you want to see? I think you want to see it, don't you? Okay. All right. Hold on. All right. Let me go into OBS. And totally didn't plan this, so it's not prepared. But just give me a moment. Gotta dig through my folders. Let me see. It is under Sukmo. Where art thou? Yeah, here you are. And what might this be? Oh, you know what? We're gonna do this. Hold on. Boop. Hey, there we go. there's my live 2D model in progress. That is done by Sukmo, very lovely artist to work with. Things to point out, this is Inteka. If you don't know Inteka, she's basically my Malice Demon. Korn is who Ember here is based off of, and Ignitrix is Zeech, all of them from 40k. But let's talk about her for a little bit. So Inteka here is the Malice Demon. She has the whole point of her design. Let me actually make her a little bit smaller so that I can look at her without looking up her skirt. But basically, as you can kind of see, she has 11 points to her. Between her back arms, her 6 arms, her back spines, and a tail which you can't see because it's hidden behind the model at the moment. But there's 11 points, and Malice's number is 11. So the whole motif is to sort of play up the Malice theming here. And as Benno has found, there are actually, if you look carefully, there are D20s in the roses. So very cool design. Now, the model itself is still in the formation stage. My model rigger is currently sort of doing not a tutorial, but sort of a, hey, I need you to cut this layer this way kind of a thing. That is Malice's symbol near the belt. It is. Very keen eye there, Benno. But it's one of those things where I expect to be able to use Inteka here probably by end of July, maybe earlier. It really depends on people's schedules. And you'll be seeing her probably when I'm doing something like video gaming more than I am doing chatting streams. Because I think Ember's a good chatting avatar and a good sort of, what's the actual term for it? Is it Zatsudan? No, that's not right. Point I'm trying to make is when I'm actually playing a real video game that I have to concentrate on, you'll probably see this one here. Oh Lord. But yeah, that's surprise number 1. Let me just vanish her into the ether. Away with you! Are there any thoughts to have one Abby for each of the powers of chaos? So, and this is probably gonna be one of those revealing moments, but I don't mind. The initial thought behind Ignitrix, the Zeech demon I use, Ignitrix or Iggy, whatever you want to call her, she originated from a quest I ran on 4chan, back when 4chan was 4chan. And for those who don't know, a quest is, or was, at least anyway, was basically a real-time, choose-your-own-adventure style sort of story that you wrote in the moment based on whatever the hell people in the thread voted on. And that was Cornet Quest. Cornet Quest followed the tale of Cinder, Ember's estranged sister, I guess would be a good way to put it. But in general, it was the tale of, yeah, like Huge Quest, exactly. Not as epic as Huge Quest, because nothing is as epic as Huge Quest, but a quest all the same. What I mean is, Cornet Quest was sort of the journey of Cinder, another Cornet demon. Was sort of Cinder's journey to being, I don't want to spoil anything or everybody wants to go read the archives, but basically, Cinder makes her mark on the universe, and it's really cool. Ignitrix, who is the name of my model for Fallout, I use Ignitrix for Fallout. Ignitrix was showing up, I want to say, Session 4, Session 5, 5th thread, maybe 4th or 5th thread. So she was originally a minor character. And at the time, and this is going to answer the question, I'm not going on a tangent here, there's a reason I'm explaining all this. At the time, my initial thought behind the quest was, okay, I'll introduce all the powers of chaos, and we'll have a jolly good time. Well, without going into details, 4chan was being 4chan at the time, and what that meant was that Slanesh, the Prince of Pleasure, was off the table. As in, I didn't want to write that sort of thing, people were being very weird about it. If you don't know, there's a reason Slanesh is the sex god, when really that's not even that's not even a good comparison. Yeah, like, it was really weird, it was really creepy, didn't want to write about it. As for Nurgle, the problem with Nurgle was that I did introduce a character. I did have a Nurgle demon. And I feel like if this person hears what I'm about to say, they're going to come yell at me again, but whatever, I'm used to their yelling at this point. A person really latched on to the character, the Nurgle character, and it turned into something where anytime this Nurgle character came up, anytime that they were not succeeding or outshining Ember, or not Ember, Cinder, or Ignitrix, like, anytime they were not the star of the show, they made a very, very vocal point about it. And that sort of turned me off of a Nurgle demon. I was like, if I give this person attention, it just enables them, and I ended up softly dropping the character from the quest, but that's why I don't have a Nurgle demon, that's why I don't have a Slanesh demon, that's why I only have Ember here, who's Cornate, Ignitrix, who's Zishian, and Inteka, who is Malice. Now, you might ask, well, what about a good member of the Imperium, good Inquisitor? First of all, Ignitrix is an Inquisitor. It's part of her backstory. She will shoot you with her bolter. But no, maybe, is what I'll say. I don't think I can say too many details, but let's just say I have applied for an opportunity in the future, which if I get it, you might see something in the future along those lines. But that's a whole big if. Don't know if it'll amount to anything. More news as events warrant. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question there, Strata. Oh, hopefully that answers your question. Oh, Lord. Man, we've really almost been going for 2 hours. That's impressive. Honestly, I thought I was going to take 20, 30 minutes to go through everything, but I'm glad we're almost at the 2-hour mark. I love it. All right. Let me see. All right, I tell you what we're going to do, because I've got a fluffy dog who's giving me puppy eyes. She needs a walk, apparently. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to find somebody to raid, and we'll do this again next week. I think I have an idea for the topic I want to do next week, but I have to run it by a few people first, because they would be names removed. They still would be examples in the topics. So I want to run it by these people to make sure it's okay to mention them. Like, I'm pretty sure Benno's been okay with me using him as an example of good influences in people's lives. But let's just say that some of these stories could reflect negatively on people. So I want to make sure that they're okay with me, talking about it, due diligence and all that. But yeah, let's find somebody to raid.